Welcome to the Angels Positivity and Love Show. I'm your host, Michael Andre Ford in San Antonio, Texas. I'm super thrilled to have Hale Dwoskin on today from the West Coast, New York Times bestseller, The Sedona Method. He has been doing what he's been doing since the 90s. He's helped a gajillion folks. He knows what he's doing, been very successful at it. I'm thrilled to have him on the show. Thank you very much, Hale, for coming on Angels Positivity and Love.
Oh, well, thanks for having me.
Hey, you've had a tremendous run in terms of if we just talk business model, but you've also had a tremendous journey from here to here. Can you share with us a little bit about how you got started? You were a big spiritual seeker at the beginning. You met Lester. If you could just
Right.
explain a little bit about
Sure.
how your path got started.
Sure. Well, I started seeking as a teenager, and then I'm not too long into the whole process of seeking. I met Lester Levenson in 1976 at a seminar that I organized for a man named Leonard Orr. He came as a guest. Lester came as a guest and didn't notice him in the seminar. It was the one-year seminar was something that met once a month for a year, and people would come and go, including guests. But fortunately, I went out to lunch with Leonard, the other organizer, and Lester, and just sitting in with Lester, there was this profound sense of peace and joy and love. And he didn't really say much. And the only thing he said about what he did was that you sit around a table and you release. And I didn't even know what that meant. But there was this feeling that if it could give me just a taste of what Lester was an obvious living embodiment of, I wanted that. So I signed up for the seminar. It was starting the next weekend. I was a little concerned about it. So I also invited a friend of mine who decided to join me. And as the seminar unfolded, several things happened. The first thing was that I recognized that this modality of letting go is extremely powerful and really effective. And at the same time, I recognized that Lester's work, and Lester was my life's work. This was at age 22. And that was back in 1976. And I've yet to waver. And now I was only 22 years old, so I didn't have major issues to deal with then. There was, of course, when you're a 22-year-old, you think everything's a major issue, but I had the usual things that anyone has growing up. But what I did notice is that immediately there was this dissolving of a sense of separate individual, a dissolving of stress and tension and anxiety, a dissolving even of the sense of me that's separate from you. And one of the profound things that happened not long after taking the course, took the course in November of 76. This was probably December or January. It was in New York City, and I found myself walking in Times Square way before it was gentrified. It was pretty seedy back then. And I was walking, I don't even remember how I ended up there, but I do remember that I was walking in Central Park. I mean, that's a different story. I was walking in Times Square, and there was complete peace and no sense of threat, despite the fact that I was surrounded at night by a lot of people who could seem threatening, very much so. And that got my attention. that was one of the first times I recognized that something was definitely happening from doing this work of the Sedona Method. And the other thing that impressed me about Lester was just his story. Basically, Lester was sent home to die from a second coronary, but rather than give up, he went back to the lab within himself and he started a process of self-inquiry. And over a 3-month period, he went from a physical and emotional basket case into a state of no self, or that resulted in profound peace, that he lived another 42 years after the doctors said, "You're toast." And by the time I met Lester, he was just a living embodiment of this love and peace and joy and freedom. And it's been an interesting journey. I was young. I immediately jumped into doing, he had 3 courses. The basic, I did that in November of 1976. The advanced, which I did in January of 77. And then the teacher's training, which I did in February of 1977. But I recognized pretty quickly that I was way too young to put myself out as a teacher of the Sedona Method. So what happened is I spent a few years just practicing it in life and becoming successful. And then in the early 80s, Lester invited me to join the teacher training program more in earnest. It had evolved by then. And I started leading workshops and eventually teaching the Sedona Method. And then before Lester died, he decided he wanted me to be the person who was in charge of the whole organization and the copyrights, everything. And he gave me all his copyrights and he asked me to continue the work. And that was in the early 90s, and the rest is history. So I've been involved in this for almost 50 years, but I took on the mantle of being the main person behind it in the early 90s. And it's been an amazing ride. The life is just life now. It's just living itself. There's no me and no you. There's no separation. There's just this, whatever is appearing. And it's been so amazing to watch the people who from all over the world who have just had so many miraculous things happen. Dissolving traumas, dissolving or starting relationships, gaining great wealth, overcoming tremendous health challenges, and universally a sense of calmness, a sense of openness, a sense of joy, a sense of peace. That it's just been really fun to be a part of, and feel grateful and honored to have been put in this particular position. I don't feel like I did any of it. It just all kind of unfolded. So that's kind of the origin story of how we ended up having this conversation.
I love it. And you help people walk a smoother path. You help people own what they've got, releasing whatever you want to call this to be more here. Can you talk to us about openness, being here more, whether it's awareness, consciousness, love, peace, calm, or talk to us about how happiness, success are intertwined. Again, how getting out of ego or thinking to allow more, lets the universe come in, lets you connect to the universe fully? What would be your way of discussing some of the dynamics for letting go?
Sure. Well, first off, letting go is natural. We make it into this big deal. But young children do this naturally. Have you ever seen a young child fall down and then look around to see if they need to be upset? And if they don't catch anyone's eye, they just drop it. So we all let go naturally. It's just like breathing. You have to let go of the breath before. It doesn't require preparation. It doesn't require process. It doesn't require anything because it's natural. This, whatever is apparently happening, is just happening. It doesn't require whatever appeared to come before. And it happens out of time. And so letting go is just the way the body-mind can deal with whatever is apparently happening. Now, is it something that we all do from naturally? Yes. Is it something that we could do more? Very much so. Because most of us actually spend most of our energy trying to hold on to what was or trying to manipulate what might be, completely missing what already is. This that already is wholeness. This that already is boundlessness. This that already is already freedom. And it's not recognized because we think I'm over here and everything else is out there. But that's an illusion. It's never been the case. There really isn't an ego to let go of. It just appears that way. There is just life, living itself. And this can be recognized. This can be uncovered. And everything that we do with releasing, with the Sedona Method, are just simple tools, techniques, processes, and perspectives that help you to discover that you're not your feelings, you're not your thoughts, you're not even your experiences. There is that which is this, which is beyond all of that, yet includes all that. And none of that is owned by a you. None of that's even known by a you. There is just this beauty or this light or this wholeness that all is.
You've had audiences all over the world, and especially online, whenever online started. And you've had a lot of this, hands coming up, and a lot of the next word, but what about? When it comes to grief, when it comes to drama, when it comes to divorce, health crisis, job layoff, I don't know, the usual bit of but. How many buts have you heard from people to say, hey, I love it, I feel it, your presence, we're talking about, we're all interconnected, no separation. But what about, how many times have you heard the word but, do you think, in 50 years, and then gone on to help the person adjust a little, shift their perspective? But how many would you say? It's thousands, tens of thousands, 100,000 more?
I've lost track a long time ago.
Do you
But
still
again,
chuckle when it comes up?
well, yes and no. Again, the sense of me is the sense of but. The sense of me is the sense of doubt. And it's also the sense of knowing. The sense of me is a sense I'm here and that's there. Is a sense that I'm the subject and everything's the object. There are things. And that's not right or wrong or good or bad. And that even the sense of me is wholeness. And so if someone brings up something in their lives that appears to be a yes, but, that is what's just simply what's happening. And there's a gentle support in not just, it doesn't really come from me because a long time ago, the sense that I'm doing any of this dropped away. But even when people are not engaged with this body mind, they catch themselves or they catch this sense of being contracted around a particular story, like this person wronged me, or this fell apart, or I have this illness, or I don't have enough money, without a denigrating the person or without a denial of what's happening. There can be a release of the fixedness of the story around that. And what happens is there's just this sense of spaciousness, of openness, that has nothing to do with this body mind. That's just a recognition of what already is. And then what miraculously happens, or just naturally happens, miraculously makes it sound more special than it is. It's just ordinary. What happens is there's a falling away of that particular illusion, and then there's a seeing of solutions as opposed to problems. There's a finding support where there seemed to have been conflict. There's a finding of cooperation where there seemed to be resistance. There's a finding of ease where there seemed to be tension. And it's not someone finding it, it's just being revealed. And it's very natural. It's actually quite ordinary. And again, it's as natural as breathing. And it's breathing is a central part of being a living organism. But letting go is just essential.
Okay. I'll throw out a couple different phrases and go in any direction that you feel you should go. You can be happy now in this very moment for no reason whatsoever. I'll just throw out a couple of words: nowness, suchness. I don't even know what I'm touching on there. I think it's Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism. There are no ordinary moments. I think that was from Peaceful Warrior Dan Millman. And then finally, all moments can be the same. Can you touch upon some menage of all that, or just your reaction, where you're going to take it?
There is no moment.
Ooh, that was even better.
There's just this. As soon as it's a moment, it has a beginning, middle, and end. And that sense of time. Now, there's of course functional time. That's how we knew when to talk to each other. But most of us live within this psychological time that's created by the story of me. And there isn't that. There's a parent time, which is required for functioning, but there isn't actual time. There is this timelessness that is everything that's unfolding, everything that's appearing. And it's boundless. And there's also no scarcity in it. You can't, there's no such thing as my time and your time. There's no time, or there is timelessness.
And it's about time. Timelessness, no limits, love, awareness, unconditional love, but then getting beyond those words, we'll call it something. And then a lot of this. Can you talk to us about, like, let's go back to real estate for you. Remember the Xerox brokers and the whole moment where you realized you didn't have that contact info to be able to relay, to the buyer what they needed.
Yes.
And then the phone call came in. Can you tell us a little bit about that story, but how it was it was one of probably thousands of moments along the path. And in a way, there are no steps on the path. You're just here. Again, it's happening to you, for you. Can you remind us how that helped illuminate a little, or just remind you
Well,
the universe
you
is
know,
there?
that specific thing is a old memory now, but yes, one of the things I did, eh, remember mentioned earlier how I realized I was really young and this body needed to live life. So one of the things I did is sold real estate. And when I was selling real estate, I had got a listing that was you mentioned Xerox brokers. This is before there really was much, there wasn't really MOM for commercial listings. It was a commercial listing, and it was a group of shopping centers, and I took a look at and didn't realize that it was had been a broker had gotten it from a broker who'd gotten it from a broker who gotten it from a broker, and so I just talked to one of my clients and said, this looks interesting. Would you be interested in it? And they said yes. So then I tried to trace down where it came from, and no one really knew. So I went, well, I guess not much is going to happen there. There was just this letting go, like, okay. And then the phone rang, and the 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 way I did my business, there was constantly people offering listings and people coming looking for things. It was an ongoing venture that I was doing with my brother, and the phone rang, and it was someone. It was the actual owner of these shopping centers wanting to see if I might have a client. And it was like, sure. And that was just an example of what can happen when the sense of me dissolves and there's just life unfolding. And and it just happens naturally and spontaneously and effortlessly. And at the time, there was quite a bit of celebrating after I got off the second phone call. It was like, okay, that turned out better than it looked like it was going to. But things like that happen all the time. When the sense of, as the sense of being a separate individual, as the sense of being limited, as the sense of being subject to all these beliefs and ideas dissolves, life always just takes care of itself spontaneously. And it's often way better than you could actually ever imagine.
Okay. When we talk about auras, seeing energy on people, the flows, consciousness, I think Joseph Campbell called it consciousness in that interview with Bill Moyers, but not just auras, energy, but Tibetan Buddhism. And I'm still going to go in other directions.
I noticed that.
Non-duality, non-duality.
Yes.
That's been very big. I think I'm going to have to make it up the last couple decades, maybe longer. But I'm just
Well,
noticing it
the
more.
last, it's been non-duality, the way most people discuss it,
Yeah.
has been around for thousands of years, but because it's pointing at there isn't actually anything called non-duality. There is just this. And it is already boundless, but it's been talked about and studied and explored. What's happened, I think what you're referring to is the past couple of decades. I think you're right. Started in the 90s, I believe. So it's 3 decades. But there were all these people who had started having enlightenment experiences and then having people sit at their feet and and they put themselves out as non-dual teachers and they talked in non-dual ways. And I think that was just a natural evolution of life unfolding. And so the way it relates to the things you started to talk about earlier is there is just energy. This, whatever is apparently happening, the computer screen that you're looking at, or if you're watching on a digital device or listening on a digital device, that's a phone, for instance, some sort of screen's probably involved. And that that device, the hand holding it, or the desk that you're sitting at, or the chair that you're sitting on, the ceiling, the floor, the body, the thoughts, the feelings, all of that is just one energy that is not, doesn't belong to anyone, doesn't need to be known by anyone, doesn't go anywhere, doesn't do anything. It just is. And then when there's a sense of a me here and a you there, there's a whole story we make up about it. There's goods and bads and rights and wrongs and you name it. And but this one energy just is. And within that, there's maybe an appearance of a separate me and a separate you, but it's just an appearance because it's one energy and it has no boundaries. So it includes everything.
Nice. Okay, for seeing consciousness or flows, have you always seen light on people accidentally? Only that one time in 1997, you were in Italy doing a retreat. When you want to turn it on, do you mind sharing something personal about that? You feel the energy, you don't see it. It's all when you go on your walks. It's the equivalent of smoking a cigar, except you visually see it, you feel it. Do you want to just tackle that in some way, if you don't mind sharing your personal experience with life?
Well, there is just life happening. There is not a personal experience of life. Life is happening, and there's often a feeling to it of, it's really hard to describe. And it's been that way so long. I can't think of a specific happening where all of a sudden it was recognized. But there's like a sense that there of this flowing light or love or energy, but it's this glass. It's this body. It's that body. It's all the objects on the wall behind you. It's the objects on the wall behind me. It's not limited to any object. And it's there whether it's a beautiful scene, like in nature. This body lives in a beautiful place in Bellingham, Washington, where I look out over a bay and it's surrounded by trees. There's a eagle. There are eagles nesting in a tree that I have a scope pointed at. And there is just this abundance of life. Yet that is all just that one energy. Yet when this body mind lived in Manhattan, in New York City, and when there was just walking through crowds of people on pavement with tall skyscrapers on either side, that was the same. That is that same energy, that same light, that same love, the same dance. And it's all beautiful.
When it comes to trees, eagles, I'll try a question which you don't have to answer. You can shift it. But do you hear eagles? Do you hear the consciousness of the trees? In India, they say consciousness is in everything, but even a rock can speak. Did you used to hear it? Do you hear it? Or is it all, again, one beyond now, that it's just, oh, I don't know the word, pleasant, um, noticeable? I don't know how to say it. You're living it. Can you just describe something about consciousness?
Yeah, there isn't any.
Hmm.
There is there is just this beingness or isness. Suchness is a good word. He used that earlier. Consciousness requires someone to be conscious. There is just this. We anthropomorphize rocks and trees and birds and everything else because we've done that with this body too. This body is not different than a rock or a tree or an eagle. It may think more, but it's not us thinking. Thinking is happening. Seeing is happening. This is all just being. And so is there sometimes the appearance of communication with nature? Sometimes. It comes and goes. If there's something required to be known, it's known, but it's not something special. It's just what happens.
For being. If I said being is believing in all, like all with a capital A, again, it wouldn't matter if it's a little a, we didn't use that word, we're using words, we're limited immediately. Being is believing in all, allow more, show love always, be love whenever you can remember to remember, if you can remember to remember. I had to add a little twist in there. Can you talk to us about, again, just being, suchness? If it's Eckhart Tolle and his presence, the way he'll approach the exact same openness. And then there's many other instructors. And I'll go on a quick tangent. Who have you enjoyed watching them come onto the scene in the decades, the last 3 or 4 decades? Have you enjoyed a few folks coming in with just, I'll say another way to say it. Is that okay to say it that way?
You can say it any way you want. Yes. Let's see. I think one of the past few years, one of the people that I've enjoyed the most is Tony Parsons. It's something called the Open Secret, and there are a few other people who talk in the same way. And there are many other teachers that I respect. You probably know I was in the Rhonda Byrne's new book. I was in the Secret, but I was also in The Greatest Secret, and I'm friends with many of the other people in The Greatest Secret. That included Eckhart and a bunch of other people. And to me, they are just friends, and we kind of hang out. And but I can't really. It's not about the messenger. It's not even about the message. It's just this. And part of where we get hung up is that we put people up on pedestals. We think that there are these authority figures that we need to help us discover that which already is. And it's not there's anything wrong with them. I mean, this body mind has been involved with hundreds of thousands of other people, appointing them in a particular way, but I didn't really do any of that. It's just what happens. And so the lack of authority is actually very freeing. If you stop looking for a teacher or a teaching, there can be just a noticing that it's not required. Life is already living itself. It's not your life or my life. Life is living itself already. And it doesn't require us to even cooperate. because that would imply that there's an us who's separate from life. We can't, everything we do, even when we think we're resisting, is life living itself. And yes, releasing, letting go, is also life living itself. When there is resistance, there can also be a releasing or a dissolving of the resistance. That's one of the things that often happens with releasing. There's a sense of contraction or a sense of holding on or a sense of resistance, and it's recognized, and then it dissolves. And what we do in our courses is we reflect back to people the certain patterns that we all tend to get caught in, and we just show simple ways of just dissolving that, letting it go. And that really supports people in not having to look outside of themselves for authority. And it also liberates us to just, at first it feels like we're living life more fully, and that's how it appears, but then eventually it can also be recognized that life is just living.
In almost 50 years, about 50 years, have you noticed when people release, has it been all sorts of bodily reactions? Tearing up, a little bit of leakiness, yawning, the body sways if they were standing or when they were sitting. Have you noticed a few little things?
Oh yes, often when there's a release, there's all sorts of physical changes. There's breathing more deeply. Shoulders are not less like this. And there can be profound things too. There can be, in the East, they call it kriyas. There can be body movements or swaying, as you mentioned. There can be all sorts of reactions. But one of the most universal things is a sense of relaxation and openness, a sense of often a warmth or an energy passing through the body-mind system, an opening to the flow of life, the ease of life. There's also a quieting of the noise in the mind, and a seeing solutions where before there was just a sense of problem upon problem upon problem. So there can be very profound changes on every level, and there often is. But they start usually with some sort of inner energetic shift that can be very subtle or quite profound.
Can we look at a very specific situation? Everyone living knows someone, a friend, family member, spouse who's passed away. Grief, death, dying as a topic. Is there a way you can touch on this if someone has just 2 months ago lost a very close loved one? There's dealing with it up here. There's a broader perspective here. And I'm going to flip this pancake a little differently and go on a tangent. If human to human interaction allows for soul to soul contact, you may not use the word soul or cosmos, universe. Can you try to tie this all together about the journey that we're all on? People shift from here, living, breathing as humans. How do you take it from there to talk about this journey, and with death, dying? Is there a transformation? How do you view everything on the other side? I don't know which way to say it for you, but can you just talk about this?
Sure. Well, first off, just something very practical. If you've lost someone, there's sometimes a hesitation to face the grief or to let it go or to see through it, because we feel like we're not being honoring of them, or we'll somehow lose the love if we let go of the pain and the grief. But I'm here to tell you that if you're willing to let go of the pain and the grief, the love just gets more profound. there's less of a sense of missing. There's a sense of that they've never left. And so that's something I just want to say to anyone who's lost someone. And the sense of losing someone, yes, bodies die. The bodies are born, bodies die. But what is deathless. The essence of that which you are and that which all is birthless and deathless. And as that's recognized, the fear of death dissolves. Death is just a part of life. In fact, even if you're a vegan, which this body mind happens to be, but some life has to end for other life to continue. So it's just part of the one life, the comings and the goings and the ins and the outs. And I'm not denying that they might be missing someone, that you might not be able to speak to them anymore, or interact with them or hug them. But they never went anywhere. And you can let go of all the suffering and just be left with what actually is this one life living itself, sometimes apparently through other particular body minds. And there's just a gentleness and an ease and an ability to just go about living life without being able to relate to the person in the same way, but at the same time, a simple way of saying it, they're still right here in your heart. They've never gone anywhere. And that's where you've experienced them all along. Yes, it's nice to have the other things too, but this part doesn't waver. The heart doesn't waver.
So this leads right into the next question topic for you to just take in any direction you wish. Trusting more, allowing more, relying on your knowing. We'll call it faith, religious faith, not religious faith. It's the same letting go to be. Can you just take it from there about this trusting more, slowing your roll if it's somebody who's still, my problem is, my drama is, my situation is.
Well, but again, there's nothing wrong with people thinking they're in a drama. I mean, we're still in a, if we think we're a person, even in an intense spiritual practice or having long-standing spiritual practice, or that's just a story too. We sometimes will judge someone because they're having a more limited story about money or relationship or about health or about any kind of struggle, but they're not actually having that story. That story may be what's apparently happening, but it isn't them. It's just what's unfolding. And so we sometimes can fall into this belief that one is better than the other. It's just the same life. Sometimes expressing as someone sitting on a mountaintop, and sometimes expressing as someone sitting in the gutter who just shut up a drug. Now, of course, one is preferable for most people, but that doesn't mean it's not the same love or light or beingness, just expressing differently. And what happens is when there's less of a judging, or it doesn't, it's not really about the judging, when there's less of a sense of right or wrong or good or bad, then there can be a moving in to help the person in the gutter, naturally, help someone discover that they don't need to be at war with countries or just with other people. There's a natural moving in that direction. It doesn't need to be forced. It's just what happens spontaneously. There's a moving to just support whatever way life is unfolding, and in allowing it to unfold the way it does too, because sometimes people don't want help or aren't open to it, or maybe don't even really need it. And there's a recognition, can be a recognition then, that they're already whole and complete and enough as they are, even if they're going through some tremendous drama or struggle. And you've probably all, I'm speaking to the audience too, you've probably all been in situations where you thought someone was doing the wrong thing. And you got in there and tried to help, and it didn't really help. It just made it more difficult. Because sometimes if we're coming in to help, we're thinking that they can't do it themselves, or they're not wholeness themselves. And in our helping, we're not really helping or hurting, but the person doesn't feel honored or validated for whatever it is they're going through. But if you can just let go and allow them to have their own experience, have whatever it is they want for themselves, then naturally they don't have to fight to defend their particular problem. They themselves can start to say, hey, wait a minute, this may not be the best thing for me. But if you're trying to convince them they're wrong for doing it a particular way, they have to defend that position. And that doesn't usually turn out well. So when there's a letting go, there's a natural allowing people to be as they are. And in that, there's also can be a stepping in to help, but it's from a very different place. It's not from a place of judgment, or I'm better, so I'm going to help you because I know better, or I have more, or whatever it is. There's just helping a friend, however that unfolds.
Ananda Mayama, if I said her name correctly, said everyone is right, walking around right, basically. And then to quote some angels, there's no right or wrong, there's proper understanding. Can you talk to us, just take that a little further about understanding, allowing right or wrong, black and white, just how to maybe go more flexible?
Sure. Well, first off, every time you let go, you feel more flexible. Because when you're holding on like this, you have to defend your sense of right or wrong. So, and because of that, you have to impose it on everyone else. You want them to agree with you because it's a threat if they don't agree with your sense of right or wrong. But there really isn't a right or wrong. Right and wrong are part of the story of me, are part of this sense of being a person in a hostile world. And these days we all seem to think we need to defend what we think is right and prove how other points of view are wrong with our lives. It's so exaggerated right now. But even that is just what's unfolding. It's not right or wrong or good or bad. It's what's apparently happening. It's the dance of the one light, the one beingness. And so it can be discovered that there really isn't a right or a wrong. There's just this. And that doesn't mean that I'm saying that murder is good, or all the things that most people would consider wrong are good. It's not about that. It's neither good nor bad. It's what's happening. But if someone's doing something that's destructive, there often is just doing whatever you can to prevent that from happening. And that's part of life too. So, but it's not you I guess the bottom line is because it isn't you who's the arbiter of right or wrong. There isn't a you to be the arbiter. There is just what is. And so if there's action required, action can happen. If there's protecting required, protecting happens. Nurturing required, nurturing happens. But it isn't you doing it. It's what's happening, at least apparently.
Shakespeare, I think he said something like, there's nothing that's neither good or bad. Thinking makes it so. I probably just slaughtered that quote. But when you're here, everything is your opportunity for growth and expansion. When you're up here, it's the next war on drugs. It's this ideology, that, just thinking at the right and wrong level. And I wanted to toss a bucket of water either into the wind or with the wind out in the big ocean. I'm going to mention life experience here. I went to Phillips Academy Andover for 4 years, Middlebury after that. In the 80s, I thought I saw a really high level of thinking, ideology, political correctness. I don't know what to call it, but it's you better all row in the same direction. And I kept quiet in a class I can remember where a particular person was very outspoken and suffered grade-wise for speaking their mind. And it's the only time I think I regret, and haven't really regretted it that much. I ducked down to get the grade. I did not speak up. There was a lot of thinking going on. I never thought I was going to see this much thinking in the 80s again. And to me, it seems like there's a lot of thinking going on, or something that you may have alluded to. Am I crazy for thinking there's a little more thinking today than in the last couple decades? Is there a way Hale Dwoskin can tackle this gently? About the thinking, is it ideology? I don't even know what to call it. There's a
See,
lot of
here's the thing. There isn't more. There's thinking. The human experience is very much tied in with thinking, but it's not the way we think. It's not that, you have to think positively or you have to think like everyone else, otherwise you're going to get into trouble or you're going to manifest something terrible. It's that thinking is part of life. It's just what happens. But that's not my thought or your thought. It's just thinking. Thinking is part of how life functions in human beings. And what is happening more is there's a breaking down of authority, and there's a magnification of the sense of polarization. The sense of right and wrong has actually been turned up a lot. It's always been there. Every generation has its issues, like the Vietnam War, or World War I, or World War II, or all these times where it seems like it can't get any worse, or it is really bad. What's kind of magnified it is that there used to be a lot more of, at least of a sense, that there was something that we could all agree on that we had a common storyline. But now even that is not the case. Everyone has their own storyline. Now the truth is, no, it's always been that way. There's 8 billion storylines right now. 8 billion interpretations of what's happening. And none of that is the truth. It's just how it's being perceived through 8 billion particular dream experiences that are centered around I'm here and you're there, and you're my enemy, or you're my friend, and I have to find out which. And that is not different than when there was only 1 billion people. Maybe the problems seem bigger, but that's just how it seems. As long as there's a sense of a separate individual, there's conflict, there's tension, there's contraction, there's dis-ease. And as that dissolves, there's a sense of freedom that's revealed as this already.
Beautiful. If we talk about the flows when you're operating out of thinking, judging, reacting, fear, stress, worry, all the other stuff, rejecting, blah, blah, blah. And then whatever's down here, love, awareness, consciousness. And again, back to thinking, if there's 8 billion people in it, I don't know if it's a sine curve and a cosine curve, they can cancel each other out. I don't like sushi. I like sushi. Bam. You kind of find out what that's worth. Everyone has opinions, and there's a lot of opinions. And if you matched it all up with 8 billion people, you'd find, what would you find when you sift through it all and all the thinking is kind of removed? Is it love? Is it nowness, suchness? The universe is really big. Hale Dwoskin, how do we handle what's here when we get past thinking, and how can we do a little less thinking? How do you tackle? An angel once said 7% less thinking is the Olympic gold medal for all of us. If we could just slow our roll a little more, doesn't matter if it's daily, weekly, monthly, it's all the same. How do you tackle that concept of just pumping the brakes a little?
Well, I every time you let go, some thinking drops away. The holding on, the contraction, the being lost in the story, being lost in the sense of identification. Every time that dissolves, whether it's something you did or appeared to do, like a process like the Sedona Method, or where it happens spontaneously, the mind tends to quiet, sometimes very dramatically. And also thinking tends to get more positive, more harmonious. And yet, even when it isn't, even when there is this tension that appears to be, that still is the same beingness. There isn't right beingness and wrong beingness. There's just beingness. And so it's very helpful to let go. It's very helpful to just allow what is to be as it is. But even if there isn't that, there's already this. And so I encourage people to explore letting go. I encourage people to honor themselves and their neighbor. And yet at the same time, even when they slip, even when they forget, even when they're back appear to be in the drama of life and being dragged behind the bus, even that can be recognized as unconditional love.
Ooh.
Even that can be recognized as boundlessness. When we think one is good and one isn't, when it has to be one way, not the other, then what we add to that when we believe we're a separate individual is all this judgment of ourselves. Well, if I was really more spiritual, more evolved, more released, more meditated, more chanted, more mantraed, more positive affirmationed, then this wouldn't have happened. Well, we don't know that. What apparently happens is what apparently happens. And what if we're not living, we're being lived? Life is living itself. And if we're attracted to things that seem to uplift ourselves and other people or seem to support us in letting go, that's also life happening as it does. And then there may be other body minds where they're attracted to things that seem to create more disharmony. But that also is just life living itself. And it's all just one unfoldment. There isn't a war between the two. That's another big misconception. We think one has to fight against the other, but even that fight is just the one love expressing itself as apparently different perspectives.
So the fight is when you resist what already is, it's just it's not allowing. How about that?
Well,
Allowing
yes,
everything to be as it is.
yes, but it's not up to us to allow it. Us allowing, there has to be someone separate from what is to allow it.
Mm. If I read a statement, it's just about compassion. Compassion is here for all. A person need only be open to receive. A new consciousness emerges. Details are not so important. Love is love. What's your reaction to that?
Well, that's a wonderful sentiment. It is. And from the perspective of being a person, that could be very helpful. Very. But at the same time, compassion is just allowing what is to be as it is. That's which is basically agreeing with what you just said. But also compassion is not seeing other, not seeing a sense of me here and a you there. That also is compassion. And compassion is what is just natural. And it's not in opposition to the absence of compassion. It's not in opposition to people who are judgmental or fighting with each other or judging each other or whatever they appear to be doing. Compassion allows for all that, is all that. So again, when we feel like a separate individual, we think it's one way or the other. It's not either or. It's all this.
I love it. Yeah. I'm going to light some sage. I do this on every show at a minimum. And for folks at home, just give yourself permission to let go. If there isn't as much time and space as we think there is, then it's no big deal to have a couple screens, to borrow from Hale earlier. We're all sort of connected as it is. Smell what you can smell, feel what you can feel, see what you can see. Don't judge. Of course, do exactly what you were going to do anyhow, to stick with the theme of the show. But here's a little bit of sage smoke, red-tailed hawk feather to push it through. And anybody who wants to catch flowers, beach smell, why go linear and why settle for just sage? Ask the universe to make it nice. Have fun. And the more you breathe, the more you let go. I don't think that's too radical at all. Hale, are you catching a little in Washington State right now, sage?
Yeah, actually I am.
Yeah. Any other extra flowers, beach smell, Hawaii, Seychelles, someplace from childhood? Only if you allow and ask and receive. I think I said that right.
There's just a little tickle.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for doing that. Okay, last couple of things. Back to the big picture in life. It's always simpler than we think it is because it's not about thinking. Can you, again, if I find, I've been thinking of this one quote, slowing down is the key to compassion. I'll put 5 out there. Compassion is treating every moment with the awareness of a newborn baby. Compassion is allowing all to be exactly as it already is, or to allow all to be as it already is. It's simply a broader perspective. Can you go from there?
Well, the last one is the one that I said something very similar. There is an allowing for what is to be as it is. It's not me allowing or you allowing. There is allowing. There is a sense of being or welcoming or isness that allows what is to be as it is, not because it's separate from what is, just because it's already an embrace. It's already all. It's already unconditional love. It's already this. And it's helpful on a personal level to do what we can to be more compassionate. I agree with the Dalai Lama. A little bit of, I don't remember the quote, but just be kind. I think that's the quote. That's another way of describing compassion. But if you're going to have compassion, also remember to have compassion for that particular body mind that you often think you are. It's not just about having compassion for whoever is struggling. If you're going to have compassion, although it's not really something you need to own, have it for yourself as well. And just be. Period.
Compassion starts with self. I like it. Couple technical questions. India, have you been and done some trips there, or Tibet? And can you just relay what you've enjoyed over the years? It could have been decades ago and you've just shifted to broader, something about India, Tibetan Buddhism. I'm still skipping a bunch of regions. East Asia and
this body has been to India. Went once.
yep.
Went to Kerala. It was very interesting to be in that culture. There, one is there's such chaos, yet there's still harmony. There's such an everythingness of it. It's just loud and crazy. And at the same time, there's this sense in India of this beauty, even when they're burning garbage in the neighborhood in big shipping containers as opposed to bringing it to a dump. And yet there's this vibration in India that is a little more palpable for most people than it is in other places. But India is just an exaggeration on some level of what's everywhere. This India is not special, just like the United States is not special. It's just what's apparently happening. And haven't been in many decades. Have no desire to go back, but it may happen. Who knows? But there's this sense that just walking down the street or looking out the window or riding the subway or being on a bus or driving your car or talking to a neighbor or looking at your phone or looking at whatever it is that's happening at the moment, that is life living itself. That doesn't really have a location. It doesn't have a boundary. It doesn't even actually happen in time. It just is. And that isness is beautiful, even when it's awful.
Can we talk one final topic to wrap
Sure.
this? Just joy, happiness, the secret to success. Is it positivity? Is abundance? Is it letting go? Is the path? You are the path. Can you just talk to us about the vibration of allowing, connecting to all there is, joy? I mean, if joy is a constant, open your eyes to see joy. Or love. Love's a constant. Open your eyes to see love. How can we end on a higher vibe about joy, abundance, positivity, happiness? Hale Dwoskin patented Sedona Method, but unmethod, no method. You are the method. Go full circle.
So a few very simple practical things. Remember that feelings are just feelings. Thoughts are just thoughts. They're not facts. They're not you. And you can let them go. And that joy and peace and love and goodness is what's natural. It doesn't come from what happens or doesn't happen. It doesn't come from outside or inside. It is just life living itself. And that abundance and all goodness is also what's natural. There already is a superabundance. And if it isn't your living experience, don't worry about it. Just do your best to let go and explore it. And everything will be revealed as you do.
So no try, always try. And we're not incorrect or correct. We're just allowing being. And I'll do two other things. Is that so? To do a pun on the, is it Zen Buddhist tradition? And also finally, love is the fabric of the universe. Are we okay with the word universe on that, or love just is?
And whatever you'd like. It's just words.
Yeah.
When we use language, language is just symbols representing concepts about what was or what might be. There is no language really for what is. No adequate language. It just is. It's not understandable. It's not knowable. It's not even really describable. It just is.
I like to say they're gloves. We stick them on and we're either hugging or slapping, depending on which way we're rolling, up here, down here. I like the hug side of the picture a little more fun.
Most people would agree with you.
Yeah. Hale, you get an option here. You don't have to do this, but I could put Joy's photo up. Photo of a angel, energy, light form who's love, joy. Is that okay to do? And we're wrapping up after that.
Well, how about instead of doing a picture,
Yep.
how about everyone just focus on whatever it is that elicits that feeling of joy or light or love for them, as opposed to.
Let's take a moment to do that. But will you just give us some more words to lead us off?
Sure.
Okay.
So what if this, whatever's apparently happening, is already wholeness, is already freedom, is already enough, is even already abundance? What if there is nowhere that needs to be gone or nothing that needs to be gotten in order for this wholeness, this beingness, this love to be as it is? And what if there is no separation in that? There is just this. Just this.
Hale, thank you from Washington State. You've been on Angels, Positivity, and Love. Awesome having you on, and really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.